Good morning. I'm here to greet the vinyl community and the true crime community. It's April 8th, 2025. Read a chapter out of Nick's book called It's Witchcraft, Wicked Witchcraft. Longtime Daily denizen Frank Sinatra held John Phillips in a special loathing due to the conspicuous affair the head mama conducted with the crooner's strange bedfellow flower child, Mia Farrow, star of Polanski's Rosemary's Baby. According to the singer's longtime valet, George Jacobs, Sinatra was introduced Sebring to showbiz circles he serviced, got on the horn to certain close businessmen friends in Chicago and Las Vegas to find out if they knew what kind of trouble his toupees maker, Jay, had obviously gotten himself into. Jack Kennedy's former crony, Frank, was used to getting the skinny on why his friends got whacked, which made him privy to some of the most closely kept secrets of 20th century crime. Sinatra's valet, Jacobs, by the way, later worked for J. Sebring's drug damaged friend, Steve McQueen. So he kept abreast of what was only a few whispered about Cielo Drive. Jacobs was aware of J. Sebring's supply cocaine and other drugs to President John F. Kennedy because JFK's dope-averse friend Sinatra often complained about how Sebring and Peter Lawford recklessly encouraged his thrill-seeking pal, the president's bad habits. Like so many of the other old-time Hollywood progeny, Sinatra's daughter had mingled with Manson, Watson, and their other companions at parties. An uncomfortable association old Blue Eyes took some pains to keep from public view. While Sinatra flaunted his own lifelong bobnobbing with homicidal hoods, many literary chairmen of the board of Murder Incorporated, the fruits of his loins partying with the newfangled counterculture criminals of the Charlie commune was going too far. Sinatra preferred his murderess to sport short hair, fedoras, and tailored suits, not long locks, bandanas, and buckskin. Sinatra's daughters first met Manson in his commune at parties held at Cielo Drive by Terry Melcher, another scion of Hollywood's royalty, to cross paths with them again when the Polanskis moved in. Summer meant fun, and the girls are two for one now. Terry Melcher, lyrics in a 64 song. Just as the standard literature presents the victims of Watson's summer slaughter spree as ciphers defined only by their innocent bad luck, equally crucial players in the drama, such as Melcher, are reduced to nearly featureless stick figures. They are run through their paces for the purpose of the threadbare plot, and only rarely do we get any sense of who they were. By purging himself in court and perpetuating the lie he told, pretending that he hardly knew the two Charles Watson and Manson, Melcher sought to erase his key role in facilitating and participating in the drug dealing that turned deadly in his former house. But as we enter the post-Bugliosi era, Melcher's long-lived lies have crumbled, though they don't live to face his particular music. He repeatedly claimed that he had never had an inkling that the murders at his former Cielo Drive involved him under police known came to his door in December 69 to tell him that the newly indicted Manson commune killers may have been hunting for him. In fact, according to what Doris Day's former secretary, Juder Lampow, told me, detectives were already protecting Melcher at his mother's Beverly Hills office 4 months earlier, immediately after the murders. Melcher claims he merely casually auditioned Charlie as late as the summer of 69, but in fact, Melcher had been an enthusiastic champion of Manson's music and philosophy since the summer of 68. Produced several tracks for a proposed album. Manson required many antidotes for his playing impromptu concerts at crowded parties in Melcher's Cielo Drive living room, although Melcher actually had the nerve to later lie that he never invited Charlie into his home. Why would he have been the end of the world for Melcher to admit his actually recorded Charlie? It's not like appreciating someone's music makes one complicit in any crimes any musician may commit. The energetic, litigious, and enduring efforts Melcher went to cover up associations with both Charlie that hundreds of Hollywood players knew all about anyway seems to go far beyond merely obscuring an embarrassing musical collaboration. Melcher swore to the cops, who clearly knew better, that he never slept with Charlie's girls. But as most of his friends knew, he actually conducted a passionate, often obscure affair with underage Ruth Ann Morehouse, whose Manson worshipping, acid dealing father, Dean, his friend Melcher allowed to reside in Cielo Drive. Furthermore, Charlie confirmed to me that Melcher often borrowed some of his girls for the erotic entertainment of record executives and other powerful music industry figures that producer courted. This was part of the vaguely defined payola he referred to. As will be explored in detail, Manson stated more than once that Melcher broke his word to the commune by not delivering on some unnamed promise that nearly got some people killed. He clarified that his oath breaking was not the much discussed record contract of legend. Charlie refused to tell me what the broken promise was. Gossip Rudy Altobelli, the owner of the guest house, however, consistently stated to his own drugged inner circle well into the 80s that Tex Watson and Melcher argued about their mutual dope business, among other personal disputes. Lest you assume these aspirations on Melcher's honesty were just the ramping of a Manson apologist, further confirmation of Melcher's mendacity has been definitely provided in confirmed Manson hater Tom O'Neill. Chaos, O'Neill's quotes Melcher angrily complaining shortly before his 2004 death to his co-conspirator Rudy Altobelli that Bugliosi was supposed to take care of hiding his deep involvement with Charlie's commune, an alliance already clear to anyone conversant with the truth about Melcher's well-documented patronage of Manson. O'Neill's important discovery of the DA's own handwritten notes that Bugliosi deliberately concealed credible claims he heard before the arrival from Danny DiCarlo and Paul Watkins that they both seen Melcher visiting Manson at Spahn Ranch and Barker Ranch after the murders has been unjustly neglected in favor of the spurious but more sensational CIA mind control and theory that book pursues instead. Though he didn't specify where, Charlie casually recalled to me that several meetings with Melcher took place long after the producer curtailed his musical collaboration in the wake of the July 1st, 69 Bernard Crowe shooting. For dramatic effect, spinners of the standard tale take on this tale like to contrast the sunny sounds that Terry Melcher and his mother, Doris Day, were known for with their nightmare that descended on Cielo Drive. But the murders most foul, overshadowing Melcher's life and career from 69, were actually part of a dark cloud that hung over him from his infancy until his premature death in 2004. The producer's deep-seated psychological and chemical problems need to be understood if we are to grasp why he enthusiastically groped Charlie's music and Tex Watson's drug dealing. Melcher was a lost soul before he sunk into the bitter post-Wizard come-down and crash. Despite his cheerful and wholesome public image, Doris Day's turbulent personal life cursed her son with a long litany of misfortune marked by her dysfunctional relationships with violent, often criminal men. One of those was Terry Melcher's biological father, big band trombonist Al Jordan. Teenage singer Doris initially accessed her suitor as a creep before she gave in and wedded him in 41. Jordan turned out to be a pathologically jealous psychopath. His brutal physical assaults on his young wife were sometimes carried out in public. When Day informed Jordan that she was pregnant, he urged the singer to get an illegal abortion. When she refused, Jordan took his wife for a terrifying ride in his car that concluded with he held a gun to Day's stomach, threatening to kill baby and mother together and to blow his brains out. Day talked to him out of it, but was still beaten for her defiance. Years later, he couldn't have escaped Melcher that just as his former home witnessed the slaying of a pregnant woman and unborn infant, he nearly met the same fate in the womb. Once he unwanted Terrence Paul Jordan was born on February 8th, 42. His father forbade Dave from comforting the child when he cried. When drunk, Jordan would wake the sleeping boy and scream him into a state of tearful anguish. Terry inherited his biological father's alcoholism. Prone to moodiness, anxiety, and psychological instability, Terry also self-medicated with pharmaceutical downers of all kinds until his death, a dependency Charlie told me he tried without success to free his fragile, frightened friend from. They eventually divorced Al Jordan, a diagnosed schizophrenic. Jordan finally made good on his promise to shoot himself in the head, but he waited until 67 to do it. Although Terry was at the height of his pop music career as crafter of the Byrds, folk rock sound, and co-creator of the pivotal Monterey Festival that year, the suicide of his hated father was still a psychic blow. The third of Doris Day's husbands, Marty Melcher, who gave Doris Day his name, was only marginally less malevolent than his real father. When Terry was in his teens, Melcher delighted in humiliating the youngster, mocking him as a sissy and telling him he couldn't bear the sight of him. He, too, beat the boy regularly, convinced the timid and frightened adolescent might grow up to be gay. Terry's stepfather sent him to military school to make him out a man. All this despite Terry Melcher's hypocritical devotion to Mary Baker, Eddie Christian's science sect, whose rejection of science anticipated his current era's widespread anti-medical paranoia. The similarities between Melcher's abuse, upbringing, and that of his close friend Dennis Wilson are obvious. Like Terry, the drummer his brothers called Denny was a sexually ambitious son of a violent father, Beach Boys patriarch Murray Wilson. As with many of the girls in the Spawn commune, the violent, unloving childhoods of Melcher and Wilson left both men open to the spiritual mentorship of the father figure they found in Charlie Manson, and the ready psychic escape afforded by the drugs sold by Charles Watson. With both Wilson and Melcher immediately invited to stay in their homes for some still unexplained reason. This dependence on drugs, combined with the need to make quick cash with dope sales during the difficult financial situation Melcher faced in 68 and 69 to his stepfather's malfeasance, was central to the producer's musical and criminal relations with the Manson commune. Although Melcher allowed Manson and Watson to borrow his credit cards, he was actually cash-strapped through the time he hobnobbed with the hippies. According to Charlie, this made the struggling producer vulnerable to crime sources of revenue. The same was true of Dennis Wilson, whose reckless spending caused the Beach Boys' financial manager, Nick Grillo, and your tale of drummers' access to curtail the drummer's access to funds. Charlie was known to carry thick wads of legally generated cash with him, sometimes flowed dough to Wilson, expecting reciprocal generosity when the chips were down. The official narrative presents a somewhat fictional Terry Melcher, so influential in the music industry that one snap of his fingers makes or breaks a musician's career. This was never true. Despite his early success with the Byrds and his roommate Mark Lindsay band Paul Revere and the Raiders, Melcher never managed to get his late 60s proteges, Manson, Sly Stone, who I went to high school with, or Graham Parsons, a record contract despite arduous efforts on all of their behalf. I can guarantee you that you've never heard of most of the acts Melcher's supposedly golden touch did manage to get on vinyl in 68 and 69. Doris Day, who met Charlie several times through her son, clarified one of the most commonly believed lies about Melcher-Manson collaboration. She stated that it wasn't that Melcher didn't want to record Manson. In fact, contrary to the main foundation of the myth, he did produce an album's worth of material. It was an unspecified record company, most likely Columbia or Capitol, or passed on in signing Melcher's discovery, just as Rapides and Elektra previously declined to record Charlie based on demo reels sent to their A&R departments. Charlie had nothing but positive memories of Day, and it appeared she liked her son's kooky guru pal as well. And in my past streams, I talked about the Sand House, and Charlie recorded in Burton Avera's house, which is owned by Brian Wilson. Charlie told me there were two reasons he was impressed with Melcher, and Dennis Wilson introduced them. The most important was that he produced an album for one of Charlie's favorite singers, 50s hitmaker Frankie Lane. I mean, for me, that dude was the royalty, Charlie recalled. I didn't give a fuck about those rock and roll youngsters, but if this guy was good enough for Frankie Lane, I'm thought all right. The second cause was rap. Poor with the Day was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, which, according to Charlie, meant she was me. In the realm of cosmic coincidences, referring to the mothers of Cielo Drive, residents Sharon Tate and Terry Melcher, Charlie asked me, hey, have you ever asked yourself why your mom's got to be named Doris to live in that house? Was recording Charlie's song all there was to the immediate bond between the conning ex-cons and the troubled rich kid? As I witnessed many times during our association, Charlie rarely got involved with anyone, including me, without at least trying to involve them tangentially in his ceaseless criminal schemes. I'm sure that was true of the relations with Melcher as well. Indeed, most of Melcher's musical collaborations in that period and after were drug-fueled. For example, even before the Manson-Melcher collaboration ended in disaster, Melcher pursued an interest in promoting the career of another erratic and eccentric country-tinged singer-songwriter, former Brian Graham Parsons. Allied in their enthusiasm for underage girls, alcohol, and drugs, Graham and Terry partied together at the Chateau Marmont, where Roman and Sharon had recently dwelt in a suite rumored to host parties of legendary debauchery. Melcher heralded Parsons as a white country Jimi Hendrix, a concept that would have surely bemused his previous discovery, Charlie Manson, no great fan of Hendrix. He was a country boy from Tennessee. Parsons brings to the foggy picture a deliberately blurred association, a previously unexplored link between Melcher and Manson's close friend and former prison buddy, Phil Kaufman. Then one of the Parsons' constant companions and the road manager of his cosmic country band, the Flying Burrito Brothers. Kaufman in turn met Parsons through Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones, who employed Kaufman as executive nanny. Translation, drug gopher. At the same time, Charlie's prison friend was frequently visiting the Spawn commune. Some of the drugs consumed were secured from Fat Sid Kaiser. Keith Richards knew Kaiser's colleague, Ian Corder, since 1966 at least, and worked with him in the Goddard film The 1+1, Sympathy for the Devil, bringing Charlie's friend Phil Kaufman even closer to the center of the Cielo Drive Roman circus scene of his participation in the legendary abandoned 1969 psychedelic sci-fi movie Saturation 70, featuring Michelle Phillips. Recently, Polanski's One Night Stand Lover, also featured in the film, shot at a UFO convention in the Mojave Desert, was Melcher's collaborator and Kaiser client Graham Parsons. The film was written and directed by Tony Fouts, an intimate of the Stones and Parsons. Kaufman was therefore a direct link between social sets previously presumed to be separate. Kaufman bridges Charlie and the Spawn commune, Melcher and Harold True party house next to the La Bianca residence. Several of the closest companion of Roman Polanski, leaving aside his earlier friendships with Jay Sebring and Steve McQueen. While Charlie was on trial in the summer of 70, Melcher arrived. Melcher invited Parsons to stay in his new home in Benedict Canyon, not far from Cielo Drive. Parsons was recuperating from a severe motorcycle accident he suffered in the presence of an equally drugged-up John Phillips and his wife Genevieve Waite. Easy Rider Melcher would soon suffer the same fate. Under the influence of every intoxicant under the sun, Melcher and Parsons recorded an album together for A&M Records. Paranoid, depressed, and under pressure from the negative media attention his friendship with Manson brought upon him, Melcher descended deeper into drug addiction, and affection with steadily stoned Parsons shared. Recalling this dark period, Melcher wrote, "For 2 years I pressed the down button and went all the way to the bottom, Russian vodka and those tranquilizers. Plenty of time to think, and the more I thought, the blacker everything got. Along with the shared weakness for cocaine and heroin, Melcher and Parsons both lost their fathers due to suicide. The Lost Album was fueled by copious amounts of drugs and liquor, reaching the nadir when Parsons vomited on the piano while Melcher nodded out at the mixing board console. Nothing like a glamour of rock and roll lifestyle." The label rejected their misbegotten creation in late 1970 after Melcher made an unsuccessful effort to salvage it during the London overdubbing session. As with the thus far unreleased tracks Melcher produced for Manson the previous year, the Parsons album has far vanished into oblivion too. Parsons, addicted to smack like his friend Keith Richards, moved on from Melcher to a never consummated offer to be signed to the Rolling Stones' own label. Doris Day's well-informed biographer David Pratt writes in Doris Day's Reluctant Star, "There is a little denying that Terry developed a crush on 22-year-old Graham, while his quickly told him that he was not interested in that kind of a relationship, whence they became close friends. Around the time that he was shacked up with Melcher and Benedict Canyon, Parsons was arrested with a satchel crimmed with prescription drugs. The substance, Charlie told me, was Terry Melcher's poison of choice. Further evidence of Parsons' engagement in the drug dealing scene linked to Cielo Drive in his musical tribute to top-tier dope dealer Fat Sid Kaiser, whose early death in '73 he eulogized in the song In My Heart of Darkness. If you lost score of all these rock and roll drug dealers, Kaiser confessed that he sold dope to Sebring, Fikowski, and Folger, and was known to have worked closely with Sharon Tate's shady confidant, Ian Quarrier, as well. In his biography, Time Between My Life as a Bird, Burrito Brothers, and Beyond, former Bird and Melcher associate Chris Hillman, a musician who played with Parsons in the Flying Burrito Brothers, wrote about a good friend from our Birds days named Charles Tascott, an old guy who ran with a lot of the Hollywood crowd. Charles, who had been a small arms instructor in the Marines in his younger days, was a tough, no-nonsense guy who could count on to watch out for you. After the murders, he opened up the Los Angeles Times one day and saw Charles's name as someone they were interested in talking to. One of the victims was famed hairstylist Jay Sebring, and there was some kind of conflict between Charles and Jay. Those who still argue that Sebring was a law-abiding citizen must willfully ignore the hairdresser's relation with the flagrantly criminal Tascott. Because of the places that Melcher, Bird, Circle, and Joining shared discussions of the dangerous Tascott, a close associate of those three crime-related frequent Cielo Drive visitors, Billy Doyle, Thomas Harrigan, and Pick Dawson, Cass Elliott's friends, and Wojciech Fikowski's drug dealer connections, Tascott was assigned to task of retrieving Billy Doyle from Cielo Drive after Fikowski drugged and raped him, bringing the battered dope dealer to Mama Cass's house, where he tied him to a tree for his own safety in the singer's yard. Manson told me laconically in 2013 that he knew Tascott on the Hollywood club scene, although Tascott emphatically denied knowing Manson. The French actress, alleged voodoo practitioner, and hypnotherapist Corinne Calvert, a friend of Jean Cocteau, told journalist Tom O'Neill that Charles Tascott once brought Manson to her home. This peripheral associations orbiting around the little-known Parson-Melcher collaboration further suggests that Parsons' friend, former drug smuggler Phil Kaufman, was at least rhetorically in a position to be privy to more of the real story behind the drug dealing that led to the Cielo and Waverly than ever admitted. Melcher called Parsons as one of those people who thought it was great to die young, which indeed he did, dying of what the coroner called drug toxicity in 1973, one short year of making it into the 27 Club, which we talked about, the Big Bopper being the first member. Shortly after Manson met Melcher in April of 1968, the producer's stepfather, Marty, widely hated by most of Hollywood, died of a mysterious illness Christian Science prayer alone couldn't cure. This led to Melcher and his mother learning that his deceased husband and manager had embezzled the Doris Day fortune, which his partner Jerry Rosenthal. According to Manson, the violent suicide of Terry's biological father, followed the next year by his equally horrific stepfather's death, left the producer in search of spiritual solace, a comfort he found not only in Charlie's music, but in his mythical philosophy of submission, acceptance, and oneness. This was the second of the more material sanctuary Melcher found in the drugs Charlie Watson supplied with him. All of the above indicates that although Melcher may have suddenly moved out of Cielo Drive in January 1969 and under rather suspiciously hurried circumstances, he was far more entitled with some of the dope dealers and thugs doing business with Fatowsky and Sabring at his former house than he ever let on. Melcher's former girlfriend, Candy Bergen, who met Tex Watson on at least one tense occasion, was a guest of her friend Sharon's 1968 marriage to Polanski. Bergen was asked by Vince Pugliosi to sit at the Tex Watson's trial if she could identify him as having visited Cielo Drive when she lived there. She said she couldn't tell one flower child from another, which was odd as Watson presented himself as a short-haired square at the proceedings. It's a much more recent statement, Bergen said. Terry was very stupid and he went out there to record Manson's group singing. This is Candy Bergen talking about Terry Melcher recording Charlie Manson at his commune. Bergen was asked by Terry was very stupid and he went out there to record Manson's group singing. He knew it was very loaded, and one of Manson's people came to the door once and I was at the house. One day Terry just said, "We're moving," and I said, "When?" He said, "Tomorrow." His mother had a house in Malibu that became David Geffen's house, where we went. Then they took the telescope off the balcony at the beach house. It was like Manson saying, "Don't try to hide from me." She may have realized or cared that she blew Melcher's specific denial in court under oath for the rest of his life that he ever went out there to record Manson's singing group. The swift departure from Cielo certainly suggests that Melcher had gotten over his head with the wizard, but just what did he get in over his head with? Manson recalled that when he accompanied Melcher to one of the several visits to Doris Day's home, Sharon Tate, who he already knew via Dennis Wilson, was there. A coke-crazed Rudy Antebelli claimed in the mid-70s that the continuity between Tex Watson's drug dealing with Melcher's permission at Cielo Drive in 1968 and Fatowsky's own illegal enterprises at the same location in 1969 were the key to the crime. The sneak of bad luck that followed Melcher from his earliest childhood surfaced again when he was nearly killed in a severe motorcycle accident in 1972 that left him hospitalized for 8 months. The injury sustained nearly led to a double amputation of his broken legs. The persistent erroneous notion that Melcher was the target of the Wilson raid on Cielo Drive recently revived by Bobby Beausoleil in several interviews since Manson's death, was roundly rejected by Manson, Melcher, and even Doris Day, who said, confirming Candice Bergen's anecdote, there were not after Terry. The house was not Terry's house. It was a rental house. Charles Manson knew he was living in Malibu because I brought my husband a telescope and it was on the veranda at the beach house. And Charlie Manson stole that telescope. Katie Lutzinger told the cops that the commune plotted to kidnap Melcher, which sounds to me like something Charlie would say about someone he judged to have him done wrong, but contradictory accounts suggest that Charlie also maintained friendlier relations with Melcher once he moved to Malibu. Lynette Frome recalls in her book Reflection that she and Charlie visited Melcher at a party at that same Malibu home to pick up Dennis Wilson, who was interrupted in the midst of an arrogant engagement in an upstairs bedroom, while Deanna Martin, that's Dean Martin's daughter, flirted with an unimpressed Charlie by playing a blues song about cocaine for him on Doris Day's piano. See how these people know each other? An actor neighbor of Melcher in Malibu swears that he saw a tall hippie he later recognized as Tex Watson wading through the surf near Doris Day's home at the time of the telescope's disappearance. If Manson's close working and personal relationship with Melcher was one of the main uncomfortable realities blotted out by the cover-up, even less attention has been paid to the equally amiable personal and business rapport between Melcher and Watson. Reading between the lines of Charlie's asides on the subject, I suspect that where Melcher's real link to the Cielo crimes lay concealed. For all of the hints suggesting the year-long Manson-Watson-Melcher association somehow influenced the complex criminal conflicts resulting in the August 9th killings, these contradictory clues ultimately lead us to much of the dead end of Cielo Drive itself. And that's the end of that chapter. The next one's called Cul-de-sac. It's a little quote from Gail Zappa, which was Frank Zappa's wife. I interviewed for Frank. He stole my material. He stole Charlie's material. People in the vinyl community telling me that Frank stole from everybody, but they still love him. Here's a quote from Gail Zappa in Mike Walker's Laurel Canyon. If you were surprised by the Manson murders, you weren't connected to what was going on in the canyon. Think Gail Zappa knew what was up? Yep, she did. That will be for next time. We're closing the chapter now. Say God bless to all our family members and friends alike. You know, people are having time problems with isolation, and I'm part of that program too, and all my friends are too. So God bless all the friends and family and the people in the community and the people in the crime community.